The science is clear, it's unequivocal that air pollution in the shape of greenhouse gases is causing detrimental effects to our climate system. I became involved in the Air We Share through conversations with Galway City Council, where we would combine science and art to communicate with the public, hoping to generate solutions for the climate on a local level.
I think the very fact that the project is happening here opens up the discussion about air pollution generally. Maybe bringing it home to people that it may well be an issue in their own street or on their own road or whatever. The air quality monitors installed locally is kind of taking a bit of the mystery out how these things are done, you know what I mean? We can point to that we have one of the monitors here on the resource centre, people come and have a look at it. They can go onto the website and see how the data is collected, and they can actually see changes throughout the day or throughout the seasons or whatever as air pollution increases.
The interesting thing about this project for me is it's really quite a novel partnership, bringing together the university, the City Council and various departments and sections of the City Council, together with the Galway Arts Centre, a community partner here, Westside Resource Centre, Galway Culture Company. That's a really quite unusual partnership and collaboration to be bringing together. And I think what we're trying to do is to see what kind of new ways of working emerge from this form of partnership.
I think each of the artists bring a really focused and highly localised approach in engaging with the community and the site of Westside. But within that, they all have really interesting and diverse international practices and experiences and bodies of research. So with the Air We Share, what has come forth through that process with the artists are projects that are both really grounded in a locality, but really international in their scope and their thinking.
The idea of breathing has been something that I've been thinking about for a while in different kinds of ways through different works that I've been making. And I guess what I found appealing about breath was the idea of the circularity of breath, that there's the inspiration and there's the expiration. Built into those words is this idea of life and death and the duality of those things. And I think there's just something very fundamental and primal about those things that can be explored in lots of different ways. I guess one of the things that I'm interested in particular is this idea of, like, with breathing, where does your body actually end? Because you take breath, you take in the air, but you also release the air, and every time you release air from your body, a part of you is going out into the world. And I think when you start to ask that kind of question, then it makes you more culpable in a way for your actions and the way that you inhabit the world. Air pollution is something that we can't really perceive. We're talking about particles that are extremely small in size, that are like a fraction the size of a hair, so that there's something that we're not really aware of in the atmosphere around us. It seemed interesting to see how I could experiment with making those particles present in some kind of way. I've been developing this system that transfers the pollution data and turns it into sound in some kind of way, or responds to sound in some kind of way, where the pollution data is triggering things and making things happen in real time. But I'm thinking about the data as being part of, like, an autonomous system or a part of an environment, and how that data is perturbing or affecting that environment. Each walk began at Nolden's Island Theatre in the city centre of Galway. Each walk sort of took a route that went through parts of the city centre and then went through Galway University and then out to the Westside. Everybody's going to be wearing headphones. They're wireless headphones, so I'll have this device hooked up, and that's going to be sending all of the sound to a little transmitter, a handheld transmitter, and then you'll pick that up on your headphones. And then I've made a little device that has a sensor attached to it and picks up real-time data that's around us and transforms that into sound. And today we're going to be going on a walk through Galway City and ending at the Westside, where you'll get to listen to the air. So what people would be hearing on the walks is, I suppose you could call it a deconstructed meditation soundtrack. So you have the sounds of singing bowls being struck. You also have these sort of drone sounds that are emerging and disappearing. There are other percussive sounds, like the sound of like wind chimes, a ceramic wind chime that occasionally will rattle if the air pollution spikes. And there's also the sounds of breathing. For this project, I wanted to try and figure out ways that I can have things that are part of the installations that are physically making sound. So the first workshop that I did with the community was a ceramics workshop where we were all working together to make these components for a wind chime. The wind chime for me seemed very logical and sort of like made sense in the context of the project, this idea of connecting with wind, with air, with breathing. Components of the wind chime were inspired by the imagery of these PM 2.5 particles that are usually in the atmosphere. I thought it'd be interesting to try and use that as a way of also thinking about air pollution. This is one of the things that Liz, one of the scientists, showed me very early on when I was talking about the research with them. She was showing me these images of PM 2.5 particles magnified so that instead of being totally imperceivable and not visible, they look like sort of like these like space rocks. You know, they're like they look nearly sort of like otherworldly, and at other times they sort of reminded me of things like scholars' rocks that people would intentionally try to make in dynastic China. These sort of like sacred rocks that would somehow be imbued with some kind of knowledge. In the workshop, we were using the clay to try and recreate these particles. So it's each component of the wind chime is sort of like a small little PM 2.5 particle. When the air pollution would spike very dramatically, people would hear an inhale sound. But there are also tonal changes that would occur, so the singing bowls would become slightly more discordant in terms of like the sequence of notes that they would play. If the air pollution was generally rising in a way that was bad, and if the air quality was getting better, they'd sound slightly more harmonic.
Cool. How's everybody finding it? Good? Yeah, there was one over there, and then there was one here. Yeah, so that happens when there's a critical drop in air pollution. That's quite dramatic. And if that's a drop, it's an exhale, and then if it's a rapid increase, then it's an inhale. Yeah, so that'll happen every time that something like that occurs. And then when you're hearing these singing bowls happening, that's when there's like a change over a certain threshold, which is like, I think I've coded it, so it's a change greater than 1.5 counts of particulate matter, 2.5. There's all sorts of environmental weather conditions that change that. So like there's a breeze today. That means that the particulate matter is getting dispersed as well. And that's also going to affect what's being read from this little device too, you know. So there's all those changes that are happening.
One of the challenges around climate change and climate data is actually making that data visceral and you know, experiential to people, because often it can seem quite abstract. Creative arts, creative practice can be really important in actually helping people to engage with the data that underlines climate change.
Something like air pollution in particular is so very, very hard to get to grips with. You can't see it. One of the strap lines of the project was making the invisible visible. And there's a great challenge in that, obviously, and it's great fun to imagine how to do that. Having the artists, scientists, and the community working together is really good.
The arts can play a really key role in not only visualising what that data might look like, but thinking and creating space for how that data or that information feels.
The Air We Share project is a really innovative project. Nothing like this has been done in the country before. By embracing the arts and by showing the results of the air quality monitors in artistic ways, it really, I suppose, gets to people's hearts rather than their heads.
Seeing the call for this project in the area that I lived, in the Westside of the city of Galway, felt really pertinent and really important to want to work on it, because it's something that affects me every day and affects the people that I'm around and sort of in the community. So most people don't know that there's a set of sensors in this area. I didn't know there was a set of sensors, and I live in the area. Going to those locations, finding those, seeing where they are, and then having a look at the data that's being pulled in terms of particulate matter, trying to find a way to make that relevant or kind of turn a lens on that for the public was an interesting thought. Finding ways to translate it or make it something that wasn't as dense, like these are really big kind of Excel files, essentially CSV files that have a lot of data. So I did a lot of work of trying to translate those. So I've translated them into audio, translated them into image, made them into point cloud particles, and kind of looking at those different parts and how they can kind of come alive. So they're all kind of like critical making experiments that I go through in my practice. I think that's why I call it phosphine, because it's this idea of things that you can see that aren't actually there. So when you rub your eyes and you see those little dots or little blurs and blobs, that's a phosphine. It's kind of making this invisible part visible. I thought it would be interesting to have a workshop where the people in the community also capture and create. And for that I'm using like freely available software on phones and things that people can just download, and then just showing the work process that I'll be using. So using that kind of scanning workflow to kind of create point cloud versions of it allows us to create an outline, an idea of the built environment that isn't as constructed as bricks and mortar. And what's emerged from kind of going through the process and trying these different things and doing the creative kind of making and, you know, putting together is like what's essentially kind of a data sculpture, a light sculpture that is reacting to the data feed that's in it. And so that'll mix light, sound, and some screen-based work together. And the work will react to presence. So by the audience being present, they will have an agency. The work will react to them. Community is absolutely at the centre of this project, and we're here in the community garden in Westside. None of this is going to work without that grassroots approach where communities feel included in the conversation, they feel that they're listened to, and they feel part of the solution. And I think that's empowering.
Although climate change is a global issue, response and solutions are enacted at local levels. So it's really important, like in the Air We Share, that we engage local communities to come up with solutions that will work on their level, for their community.
We started A Place of Their Own back in 2010 as a way to bring together various aspects of our work and practice. So my background in architecture, Paula's in art. Some of the concerns that we had and still have, although it is quite open-ended, were around the role that kind of a critical art practice can have in questions around politics, climate, ecology, and all asking kind of where that happens. One of the quotes that we really enjoyed is by a geographer called Dorian Massey, who describes place as the simultaneity of stories so far. So this is a really nice kind of way to see what makes a place is by the people that are there, but they're kind of intersecting kind of past, present and future stories, if you like, coming together at the same point. So we were really interested in the Air We Share project because it connected with a strand of our practice, which is about the creation of new imaginaries. The Air We Share was a way to explore what an imaginary of the air might be like from various different perspectives. The specific project that we're doing for the Air We Share is called the 9 Freedoms for the Air. The 9 freedoms here then are about the what we've called the communities of the air, or the air dwellers. We wanted to try and work in the project with the participants to really see the air as kind of teeming with life and contradictions and negotiations and so on. So we defined these different kind of air dwellers, so humans, the birds and insects, the fairies, a slew of she from Irish folklore, but also gas and dust. So they became our kind of air dwellers.
One of the ways that we wanted to work with the community to develop these 9 freedoms was the proposal to make a textile, which it was very much at the early stages. We knew that we wanted to come together around like the kitchen table to a place of negotiation, a place where people would make decisions and talk about things while making. Almost enacting as we were learning about the air dwellers from these different advisors, and we would also then be learning about stitching. The textile would then be an enactment of the kind of negotiations that we were talking about that were happening within this speculative scenario of these air dwellers, thinking about the 9 freedoms for the air. It's not a one-off workshop, it's not even 2 one-off workshops, it's become its own thing that transcends, what Sam and I gave it a frame, and then it became what this group made it, and that's been a very exciting process. Just even the way everyone interprets the stitch differently, it's amazing. Got so many ideas.
Like we learn from each other.
It's
so much
collaborative. It has been like so much of the weeks we've been talking and thinking together and imagining together and writing together, coming up with different stories of the air together, and it's and this textile is a way for us to kind of continue that conversation with other people.
Something you mentioned in that book about stories of air, I think it was air and ancestry, the fact that air has come through the eons. Cool and I remember that just stood out for me, and that part of that learning,
definitely. Yeah. That it's about space, but it's also about kind of time as well.
Yeah, that it carries the stories and carries memory. Like you often hear of the land carrying memory and people being in touch with the land, but I never thought on the air carrying memory. So
because all of those words like learning and responsibility and care and stuff, movement, they're all in the textile as well.
Yeah.
And they've come from our discussions.
And that's so important.
Only emerged from this process. So,
this kind of gave me hope that maybe that kind of people will see our work done. Like textiles is very powerful, art is very powerful. It's kind of tell the story. People go inside, want to find out what is this about. I think people like who is not very responsible neighbors will be learning from it, hopefully,
But it's the power of objects and
the project was really then about how, through different stories, we might get to know these air dwellers and start to think through the project about what their kind of their freedoms or rights to the air might be.
Then we would imagine what we would think about these different air dwellers if they came together to negotiate freedoms for the air. What might that look like? What we decided to do is that we would pull together different people who might be able to almost like just advise some of the concerns for these other air dwellers.
This became this sort of dominant kind of mode of practice for the residency, which was really rich, complex, challenging times, kind of drawn out process over a number of months.
The collective making is really important to that, and each individual, whether they're brilliant at stitching and they're really experienced stitchers or whether they've never stitched before, all those contributions literally are in the textile.
I would hope that the outcome from this work will be long-standing partnerships between the university and the communities that it serves, including the local communities, including the artistic communities, and that that communication will be ongoing.
Some of these issues are international in scope, air pollution, climate change and that, and all communities have a role to play, I suppose, in meeting those challenges, in learning about those challenges, and also local spaces like this are a good place to get realistic feedback from ordinary people, for the people who make policy, to hear those voices from the ground and the challenges that people face in implementing some of the things that we all need to do.
There's huge potential in the long-term value of a project like this. What we've shown is that we by working in this cross-departmental partnership, we can actually open up some really interesting dialogues and conversations.
The arts can play a key role in catalysing change by creating spaces for collective imagining and dialogue and exchange. And it's through that exchange that true change can happen, not just in the world, but in the air that we all share.